Hey guys, welcome back to Voices of the Community. Today I'm sitting down with somebody who's been around the game since almost the very beginning, Beezy. Beezy first downloaded Marvel Contest of Champions back in high school. Like so many of us, he played between classes, at home, whenever he had a spare moment, and slowly climbed his way through the early progression system all the way to Proven. But then life stepped in. College came, priorities shifted, and MCOC had to take a back seat. Fast forward to late 2022, early 2023, and Beezy made his return. Not just a casual return, he dove headfirst back into the game, grinding through content, joining alliances, and pushing all the way to Valiant. What's remarkable about Beezy's story is contrast. He's seen the game in the earliest days, left it behind, and returned to find a whole new MCOC. New metas, new champions, new in-game content, and a very different community. He brings perspective that only veteran player who's lived both eras can share. In this episode, we'll talk about what it's like playing MCOC in high school, what it felt like stepping away, and what it means to return to a game today as a daily player chasing the end game. We'll dig into how the game has changed, what Kabam has gotten right, and what's gotten wrong, and how the community itself has evolved over the years. So let's get into it. This is Voices of the Community, and today's guest is Beezy. Hey guys, Yusuf is here. We've got Beezy. Beezy, welcome. Could you go ahead and start telling us a little bit about yourself and how you discovered Marvel Contest of Champions?
Yeah, good afternoon or evening. Sorry. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm Beezy. I discovered this game. I was actually sitting in an AP class my senior year of high school. I discovered this game. We were watching a video and I was bored on the App Store. I just had my brand new iPhone and I was looking around. I saw this and I downloaded it and I couldn't really stop playing it. I would play it during class, during lunch. I'd play it at home. I did it for about the rest of high school. And I did it first week, so I had the funky little green title. Um, when I got to college, I stopped playing for a bit.
Okay.
My first semester grades came through, and I realized that I had a lot of other things I had to focus on besides that.
Right.
Got rid of a few things, focused a little bit on that. I came back to the game, so that was from 2015 to 2019. I came back to the game around 2020.
Okay. COVID.
Did not play it that much at all. I did like arenas here and there. I didn't want to get too much into it because I felt like I would develop a really bad habit with it. So
Right.
I didn't do too much of it. But I really got back into it in 2020, late 2023, early 2024 is when I really got back into it. I was sitting in the barracks at Yakima Training Center in Washington, and I was bored out of my mind. And I was looking for stuff to do, found it again, and it hooked me from there. From then on, I went all the way up from Proven till Valiant. It took me about a year and a half or so to get all the way up there to where I am right now.
Okay.
From then on, it's really has just been more like at least an hour or so every day that I carve out some time to play. Whether it's doing story, whether it's doing arenas when I can, whether it's doing EQs, War, Alliance, Quest, Battlegrounds, things like that. It's been pretty much just about every day since then.
Nice. You mentioned that you were in the barracks at Yakima training station. What is that?
Yeah. So Yakima Training Center is a little army training post in Yakima, Washington.
Okay.
We'd have some soldiers and stuff. We'd go out and we would just do some training stuff out there. They would have us. We would usually be out there for about either 2 weeks to a year, or the weekends every so often. We would go out and do stuff. It's pretty arid, very dry, really hot, especially because we were in July. It was in July,
Okay.
so they would have us doing stuff. We would go out to the field during the day, and we come back at night, and we wouldn't really have a whole lot to do. We'd have our phones, we'd have chargers, we'd have some reception, so there wasn't a whole lot we could do, but that was something we were able to find out. So
Well, outstanding. Thank you for your service. I really do
thank you so
appreciate
much.
everybody that
Thank you.
that does serve in the military. They really are a proud patriot, proud veteran. Thank you again. All
Well,
right.
thank you so much.
So you started playing in high school. Can you?
Yeah,
Uh, you've been around since the very beginning of the game, early beginning of the game. What were
that is
those?
correct.
What
Yeah.
were those days like for you as an early player of Marvel Contest of Champions? What
The
really?
game is.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wondering. So early days of the game, have you? What brought you and kept you as an avid player in those early days?
I will say, the thing that kept me the most, honestly, and that keeps me around now is just how simple the game really is. The
Yeah.
loop and the core satisfaction of the game, it really hasn't changed a whole lot since 2014.
Right.
I mean, the formula itself is really, it's simple. I mean, it's what, tap to light, swipe to medium, hold to block, and hold to heavy. And that stuff has really kept you around. It has, obviously, as new champions come by and new mechanics get introduced, that core mechanic really stays the same. And you add more, and the feeling of collecting and the feeling of, find new champions, your favorites getting added to the game, all these things happening. It really keeps you going. And that core mechanic by itself, it's simple and it's fun and it's easily replayable. It's easy to get sucked into.
Right.
It's hard to kind of drop.
Right. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I remember, from what I remember back in 2014, it really was the same thing. I mean, this was before, parrying and dexterity were introduced, and it really was like as bare bones it could be. You really had like your story quests, you had like your arena fights, and you had a few other things like that from what I can remember.
Right.
But like watching the game from then up until now, how it's evolved and how many things have been added, things have been taken out, how complex the nodes have been, everything like that is like watching it kind of, go through from what it has been to what it is now. It's good how it's able to stay the same despite all that, to stay similar, like not lose itself from, what it was back then
Right.
to now.
So in the early days of you playing the game, do you remember your first big champion, that your first favorite champion or event that hooked you back then?
My first favorite champion was Howard the Duck.
Oh
I
my God.
remember
Yeah.
he was my first 4-star, and he was so different from anything else that I had really experienced back then. He was so, because back then I feel like the champions that came out in 2014 and stuff. I don't remember when Howard was released. I think he was actually a little bit later. But that was the earliest one that I can remember. But everything else, you have like your Hawkeyes and your Thors and even like your Hulks and stuff. Like I know their mechanics are pretty different,
Right.
but their movesets were all the same. Um, and for me, it was just different enough for me to be like, okay, I'll do a few arena fights, try this out. And that was enough for me. I don't remember a whole lot of the story back then, but I remember struggle. I was one of the ones that struggled in Act 5
Right.
before it got
Right.
nerfed.
Right.
Back when it was like a few 100,000 PI, and you had like your 3 stars and your 4 stars. When I first heard that it got nerfed the first and second time, that was kind of what was able to be like, okay, I was looking at the forums and I saw that and I was like, okay, this is what's gonna this could bring me back. This could, elevate. I think it was one of the nodes in 6-1 that was like I was just not having a good time. And one of the nodes in 5-1, and I did the collector fight too.
Yeah.
All those things. It was a lot.
Yeah.
So,
The collector fight is often referenced by a lot of players as being one of the hardest fights in those early days. So absolutely.
yeah.
Were you around? So you speak about early days. Were you around for the 12.0 nerf and the perfect block team?
I I don't think I was. I don't remember hearing a whole lot of feedback about that. But that
Okay.
was also at a time where I wasn't really super in tune with what like the patch notes and stuff, what was being like updated
Right.
day by day, week by week. I just kind of logged in, did whatever. If they changed something, I probably didn't notice it.
Right. Okay. So you said you came back to the game in late 2022, early 2023. What was it like jumping back into the game after years away? Did the game feel totally different, or was it like picking up an old hobby?
It really did feel more or less the same. It felt similar, but it felt new. A lot of things definitely felt shiny. And I was a little overwhelmed at first with everything that had been added.
Right.
I mean, you had alliances, you had alliance wars, you had all the arena stuff, you had all the story. There were like 8 different sections for the story. It was all the way up to like Act 7.
Right.
I think Act 7 was just about getting finalized around that time. And the biggest thing as well was like all the different crystals that were in the game. I think one of the first crystals that was featured that I remember getting was for spots. I think it was around the time when, if I'm getting this right, it was when Future Ant-Man and like Absorbing Man were getting it. I think that's like actually later in. But it was some of those crystals that were getting added. And this one I was like, oh, 300 units for a chance at one feature crystal. That sounds great for like a 5-star.
Right.
And I say this now, and I'm like, wow, I really was dropping so many units on what essentially now for like an Endgame Valiant is like the equivalent of nothing. And
Right.
you can go and buy like different, like 3 different 5 stars, 2.5 5-star champions for like basically 500 battlegrounds tokens.
Right.
And back then I was like, I just, I see this a lot too in like global and stuff. People ask like, should I buy the featured? Or people will ask like, is it worth it? How can I get 5 stars? How can I get 6 stars? And you look at their account, they're like proven. And I was one of those people that would ask those questions, and I would get so frustrated when people were like, just play the game. I was like, no, I want it now. Because I think the core of just collecting was always there.
Right.
And I think that satisfaction of finding a champion, and especially getting a rarer one, or finding one that you really like, has never gone away. And especially when the champions get added now, somebody's favorite's always going to be in there, and they're going to want to take them up. And they're going to come back from the game after taking a long hiatus, and they're going to see so and so is added, and they're going to want that, and it's going to pull them right back in like it pulled me in.
So you brought up the subject of units and acquiring and collecting champions. Would you consider yourself a free to play player, or a casual spender, or a whale in this game?
So I've actually, I don't really know where the threshold is between casual, spender, and whale.
Okay.
But I will say that I have the summoner sigil. I feel like that's been decent, just for the increased inventory space.
Yep.
The platinum passes have usually always been good for me, and for the most part, me and my alliance, we do a little bit of work to do well in banquet every year.
Yeah.
Other than that, yeah, unless something really, catches my eye. For me, recently, my one of my favorite characters is Moon Knight. And so when the Summoner's Choice came around last year, I was one of the ones that was very feverishly voting for Mr. Knight.
Okay.
And when he won, I was surprised, but I was like, I told my friends, I was like, I don't care how much money it takes. I'm gonna get Mr. Knight when he drops.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so last week I did. I got him, and he's sitting R4 now, unduped, obviously. But yeah, I did well for that, but it's got to be something incredibly special. It's got to be something that's like significant to me.
Right.
Other than that, I try to keep it as free as I can.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've seen some crazy things that Mr. Knight can do. I think he's a fabulous champ. I know the developer that developed him, and it's just an absolutely fantastic addition to this game. So I'm totally with you there. So you started early on in the game, and you put it down for a bit. You came back, and now you say that you've reached Valiant, or soon to reach Valiant.
Yes, I've reached Valiant. I reached Valiant actually with the completion of Act 8's Crucible.
Okay.
I guess that was like, over a year ago was when it came out?
Yep.
Yeah, about a year. It was over a year ago. So I hit Valiant with that. It was that and Necropolis and completing Act 8-3. I did all those around the same time.
Okay.
And that's what got me down.
What does hitting that milestone mean to you personally? Was that a goal that you strived for? And if the next milestone, what is that next milestone? And will that next milestone be your near-term goal for that as well?
I think for me, Valiant definitely was. It was nice, but I came in to a point where like Paragon was pretty much established to be like this was it. So I came into Valiant when it was like relatively new.
Yep.
And so at that point, it really didn't feel as momentous for me hitting Valiant as it did hitting Paragon. And that's probably a little weird to say because Valiant is like obviously the end.
Right.
But I think for Paragon to me it was the last progression point where you had to have done a certain part of the story,
right,
to get there. But obviously, and this is a whole other conversation about how the stories have how the story has evolved and what the difficulty looks like and how I don't want to say it's gotten easier because it honestly, to me, it hasn't gotten easier. But for me, getting to, how to get Valiant, you have to do your 2 7-star champions to rank 3.
Yep.
And your 8-3. So for me, getting and beating Act 8-3 was nowhere near as time consuming as it was getting the 7 stars ranked up.
Right. And the resources.
And the resources to get that because, they're at the time they were locked behind these incredibly Everest content things. It was at the time, it was you really only could do Necropolis. You had to do complete and explore A3,
Yep.
and Crucible was the newest one to have those. Now it's not as common. We get power crept and stuff and things kind of as they get more recent, more less recent, they add new ways to have everybody else kind of catch up. Rising ships
Yep.
or rising tides bring up all ships, as it were.
That's correct. Yeah.
But still, I mean, it feels good. I think that being to a point where I think the biggest goal that I set for myself is just ranking up champs I like. I'm
Right.
at a point now where my roster is pretty deep and is broad enough to where I can do just about any content that I really want to do. And I can do that. I can do it relatively easily. It's not that much of a problem. I'm able to do the story. Me and my friends, we can rush through story the first week as it comes out, and it's fun.
Yep.
And I don't really feel limited by my roster like I used to.
Right.
It can definitely feel very constraining and a little frustrating when you watch videos by like MCOC Noob or MCOC Encyclopedia, Simula 67, all the folks who do these guides, which are great guides. A lot of them are really in depth, but a lot of the times, a lot of the story missions, the counters are just have this champion,
Right.
play this way, and it can feel really restrictive, but it makes sense. I think that, and I don't want to go on a tangent here, so you didn't ask me this question, but I think that's kind of how it relates back to how the difficulty in the story evolves over time. It's not always going to be as simple as let's just give this champion or this boss node more health and more attack. That's not going to challenge you as much. I don't mind the fact that you have to have nodes to play around and think around, because it makes you stretch your roster. It challenges you in ways that just throwing a big boss that you wouldn't be able to do. But there's a limit to that, I feel like, or there's an end point to where it really just sometimes it does feel like you have to bring just this one champion to counter it that no other champion can really do.
Right.
And I remember what it was like to see, for this path, bring Ghost or bring Warlock or Magneto or Corvus Glaive or Hercules, everyone's favorite.
Right.
So I think it's a balance, honestly.
Yeah. It seems to me that it's very evident for the game is that Kabam decides to release either a champion or invent a node first that is a great defender and hard to beat, and then about 3 months later they release an offensive champion that directly counters those nodes and those champions. So
Yeah.
it's definitely they introduce the difficulty and then the solution to the difficulty, and it's just a cycle that keeps on going back and forth. We're talking about onslaught. We're talking about all these really difficult nodes that are being introduced in Alliance War and so forth. And then later on, after they realize that there's been workarounds or players have found workarounds, then they release a champion that directly counters that issue. Yelena, when Yelena was first introduced, I mean, everybody was just banning her straight out of Battlegrounds. But now we've got 3 or 4 direct counters to her that were released months afterwards. So it's a cycle. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing for Kabam to do, but it's working for them so far. All right, so
I think
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree. I hear exactly what you're saying, and I agree with you there. We've seen that several times. I mean, you mentioned Onslaught and how it took a few months, and Jack-o'-lantern was added as one of the best counters, and then we had Bastion added as one of the best counters.
Right.
I mean, we've seen that with Captain Britain's new rework and the Maker. I mean, Captain Britain has that one mechanic, Safeguard, that right now, and I'm sure we'll see it in the future, that really only the Maker counters at this point in time. And we saw Bullseye get released, and he absolutely dominated Battlegrounds. He dominated. I'm sure. I don't have a whole lot of experience with top tier war, but I'm sure it's probably the same thing. And there were a few niche counters here and there, and then you get Gentle, whose more or less entire kit is built around countering that. Serpent and Spiral. I could go on. And I don't. Whether it's good or bad, I feel like doesn't really matter as much whether it shakes up the meta or not. I feel like if it's monetary, I think it's just like it's what you do if you want to make money. You know, you sell the disease, sell the cure. I think is what I've heard
Yeah.
creator how they coined it.
Yep.
Um, and from a, I mean, it makes money. You know, that's just the bottom line.
Yep.
You sell a problem, you sell a solution. Both ways, you're going to come out on top. You're going to spend. You're going to be able to spend to get those counters to stay on the bleeding edge. And I'm sure at high levels of battlegrounds, at high levels of alliance war, things like that, that more or less becomes mandatory if you want to stay on the winning hand.
Right.
Um, and it sucks, but if it's going to make the money, it's not going to change.
Right.
So that's all I've got to say about that. It probably isn't going to change.
So let's change gears here a little bit, and here's another question for you, and we're going to start to get into more controversial questions. So please answer if you want or not. We can.
Okay.
It's your choice. But so now you've played in the old days, you know, back
Yeah.
prior to 2020, and you've played in the current system. Do you think that Kabam has improved the game delivery over time or worsened game delivery over time? And in addition to that, do you think that Kabam has improved their communication with the player base, or it has gotten worse over the years?
As far as game delivery, I think it's incredibly easy to look at how things have developed over the past few months and look at everything that's just been bad.
Yep.
I mean, the Summoners Fest, a lot of people consider that was a disaster. I mean, half the points we got was because it was compensation.
Yeah. Yep.
Things were bugged, things were not developed or produced on time, delivered on time.
Yep.
Things were behind, they didn't work, and there was a lot of issues with that. It's really easy to say that, like, and I know it's kind of like, I feel like it's a joke at this point where like the game is down for 20 minutes and people are like compensation, compensation.
Right.
But I feel like it's rooted in some truth. And I'm not going to claim to have any kind of understanding of how, game development works,
Yep.
how to run a server. We could armchair quarterback this stuff all evening, but I don't know. And
Right.
if you know, that's great. But I myself, I couldn't speak to that. What I will say is that I value communication. I value them at least saying like, "Hey, we're working on this." I think that in looking at the forums in the past, like recently, and I've seen so many different like moments where they pull back the curtain and try to explain what's going on, how the AI works in the game. Um, Monetization just kind of like, giving us things to look forward to as far as like monthly events. And I like that. It gives you a reason to come back to. It's not just like, Battlegrounds or Alliance War. Um, but then there are some things that just make me just wonder why.
Right.
The biggest thing, especially in the past few weeks, has been the energy change. I know a lot of people are very much like it's hard to find energy,
Right.
and it definitely like it's easy to stock. For me, I feel like it's feast or famine. With gold and ISO 8 especially too, it's feast or famine.
Right.
And with energy, you either have a lot of refills, but you don't have any,
Right.
and then they go away. But to me, I can't really get behind the idea of deprecating Elder's Marks. I mean, energy is kind of sparse as it is,
Right.
and having to spend 15 energy or so when you could be questing with that just kind of feels like a waste. It also puts a cap on how much battlegrounds people can play, which whatever. But some people really do rely on that, and some people have a lot of Elder's Marks. Like I know a lot of like I feel like at first you don't really have that many, but you build up so much you don't even recognize it,
Right.
and that just becomes what you do. And so like there are some changes where I think like I don't know what they're thinking, but end of the day, it's not going to stop me from playing the game.
Yeah.
So it'll stop some people, but
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it is a feast or famine sort of situation for some of the resources, and definitely when they make those big changes about with the elders marks and with the energy, it, I hope that they think that they're not getting one by us, right? I mean, we have a very
yeah,
loyal and very active player base that will identify those little changes that are they try to kind of slip through the cracks, and hopefully nobody will notice. But we do have such a big player base that is very vocal. and they'll latch on to anything that happens that keeps from playing this game. All
Yeah.
right, so so some say that this game has become too grind heavy, and I'm saying that with you thinking back in the day before battlegrounds, there was the big grind was arena and getting the new 6-star, 5-star, 6-star champs out of arena, and now it's battlegrounds where people grind. Do you think that this game is too grind heavy right now compared to the early days? What's your take on that?
Battlegrounds being grind heavy. I personally, I can see that, but I feel like at the end of the day, all this stuff is incredible. Like it's optional.
Yeah,
You
good.
can play as much arena as you want. You can play as little arena as you want. That's fine. Getting units is great. Spending units is not as fun, but people do it sometimes.
Right.
Playing battlegrounds is great. Not playing battlegrounds sometimes is even better. Um, there definitely is some really good stuff to be had in there, but I don't know. I do remember, like, I feel like having battlegrounds be the big chase, it definitely is better than having arena be the big chase
Yep.
because arena's been the same thing for 10 years.
Yeah, it
You
has not
see
changed.
champion, you see mats that you want to get, and you throw 3 champions in there and you do your thing for like a minute or so, and then that's it.
Right.
You can play arena and watch anything. You can have music playing. You can auto fight arena sometimes. That's one thing in the game that has not changed.
Right.
The battlegrounds has new metas that shift, new things to chase. The grind to get into. VC or I'm sorry, GC is always in there. Um, so I feel like it is better to grind battlegrounds, but a grind is a grind, and that core aspect of it doesn't really change no matter what it is. If you're grinding for something, I definitely agree. It's better to grind something that's actively changing than something that's static.
Right. I'm going to throw a question at you, and I know what the answer is going to be, and that's the sign of a terrible interviewer when they know what the answer is going to be from the player. Um, do you feel that Kabam is putting more emphasis on rewarding skill, or is it mostly about roster depth and spending?
Oh, that's a better question. That's actually a really good question. At the end game, I feel like it's got to be roster depth
Hmm.
because like say for instance like Act 8 or Act 9 for you had just dropped, right?
Yep.
And
9.3.
how everybody at like the end game from Valiant, right? Valiant has such a high, like it's just so broad. You've got Valiants that are like in the low millions, and you got Valiants that are like in the 10 millions.
Yep.
So if you make content that is going to, try to appease everybody, like there's going to be an obvious discrepancy. There's going to be an obvious fallback. Folks are going to get left behind. So the common denominator there is technical skill.
Yep.
The Grandmaster is, in my opinion, one of the best fights out there. It sucks. I don't like it, but for its time, it was incredibly well designed.
Yep.
The collector sucked because the collector took your degeneration and it was just stupid, and everybody just uses it as a revive or a potion or a revive farm sink. Sorry.
Yep.
That doesn't change, but like you have more fights in the end game now that reward being able to read and being able to think about things and bring counters, things like that. And that's a common denominator. If someone's struggling on an end game fight like now, it's usually not because they're missing the one champion that's going to take them there. It's usually because they usually just aren't knowing what exactly they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But yeah, I think that definitely having a way that I think it kind of relates back to what I talked about earlier about how you keep the challenges fresh and not just by increasing the size of the champions you're fighting. Is that it needs to have a way to challenge. Okay, like yes, you have really good champions, but do you know how to use them? That's how you kind of diversify and how you keep the challenge fresh without just keeping it stale. In
Right.
my opinion.
Okay. So I've ended my questions that are kind of thought to be a little controversial. Before I move on to another topic, is there anything else you would like to address or to communicate to Kabam in case they watch this video?
Um, on this topic, I will say one more thing. Uh, I may be the minority in this, but it kind of goes back to how you talk about like communication,
Yep.
um, and about the monthly EQs. I love the EQs.
Yep.
I think that what they've done with them is fantastic. I was somebody who would do the event quests every month. I did the Throne Breaker. I explored all that nonsense. I
Right.
used all my energy refills. I did the Paragon, and then when Valiant came out, I was like, yes, more EQ. I did the Valiant EQs, and then I stuck around for all these changes.
Yep.
How they changed the first two times, and then they kind of reverted it for the second one, and they made it something else. I think that their communication just like through all that was really good. I think that them being honest and saying, hey, we may have made this a little bit too difficult. Let's dial it back. So what we have now, it's probably controversial, but I love the change. I love it being doing their best to accommodate for Valiance and everybody else of all skill levels. It
Right.
runs the gamut, right? Obviously, we have some Throne Breakers who are touching 5 million. We have some Paragons who are in the six digits. And there's just something in there for more or less everybody. Granted, you could say, yes, it depends on your roster size. That's one thing. That's neither here nor there. But I think that their communication through all that was really good. And I like the CQ. Some of my favorite content. I don't care. That's all I got, though, on
Yeah.
that part.
Yeah, yeah. It's to me, it was admirable to see the quick turnaround of release of the initial EQ, and then comments and feedback given to them by the player base, and then the re-release of EQ that same month. So the cycle of feedback from players to Kabam and back, only took about a week to do. So it was great to see them be so flexible with EQ. I
Yeah.
completely agree. All right.
Yeah.
How important has your alliance been in your return journey? Um, Tell me about them.
Sure. So when I first came back, I definitely did just click join random alliance,
Yep.
and that was really it. I didn't really care where I was at.
Right.
I just wanted to get those rewards, and I would just kind of go from place to place. I wasn't really worried too much about that because I was like, I'm not in a place where I can benefit so much from all the end game stuff. I don't need to. I don't know. I just kind of wanted to have a clan tag. It was okay, but they didn't really do a whole lot. I think that when you auto join Alliance, you get exactly what you pay for.
Exactly.
Their cost of entry is really low. They
Yep.
don't really do a whole lot. They're usually in there for probably about a week or so, and then they dip, and that's fine. Turnover rate's high. They don't ask you for anything,
Yep.
so you get a few alliance at the bottom. You get a few rewards at the bottom floor, and that's fine. As I started playing a little bit more, I ended up joining one alliance, and this was around banquet time, and I didn't recognize that we had a whole bunch of whales in there, and it was nice. That was cool. So I stuck around for a little bit. But in being in global and stuff, the more I talked to people, the more I kind of knew who they were. I kind of got an idea of what I liked and what I didn't like.
Yep.
And I would find some alliances that more or less tried to align, or that I tried to align myself with what I wanted. I did join an alliance that did a lot of war, and I realized that back then I was not really
Up
in
to
a
it.
good place to be doing that. I think that
Right.
somebody who's a fresh cavalier should not be trying to push in a high gold alliance for war. I
Right.
learned it the hard way. So yeah, that was that. At least some people can do it, but it wasn't for me.
Right.
And then as I played and as I did stuff more and more, I found some folks, and we were on a lot of the time, and we all just kind of got together and we made an alliance. It was very much homegrown, very organic to that global
Right.
alliance, and so we did that. And a lot of us we'd known each other for a while, and really, we ended up really recruiting solely out of our global. I know there are some folks that do like recruitment. They use apps like Line, they use Discord, and that's fine. That's to each their own. But for us, we were very much big on recruiting out of our own alliance, so we didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff.
Right.
Obviously, there are some drawbacks there. Uh, but they're pretty funny, honestly. But for me, I think then I was a Paragon, high Paragon, low Valiant. I was kind of pushing for that. The big focus for us back then was chasing 7-star Nightcrawler from the sagas. That was back when sagas were a thing. So we were playing BGs, and I think for us it was just good to have an alliance that would just play Battlegrounds and just focus on that. And it was good for a little while. And then over time, we kind of realized like, hey, Battlegrounds is cool, but for the most part, we're just kind of just here. And it was nice to have that sense of belonging. Like everybody's here together. We do whatever, but it's not super mandatory. We do Battlegrounds sometimes, but we don't really focus on war. We don't focus on alliance quests. Do what you got to do. And raids showed up. And so now we started focusing on raids a lot. So for us, really, it's been just us doing, whatever stuff comes in the game. Alliance stuff wise, it's nice to kind of knock that out when we have to, when we want to, but it's, yeah. And then obviously when Banquet comes around too, having like-minded individuals who are going to aim for those end goals is also nice too.
Yep. So it sounds like your alliance grew with the addition of new content being released, new and regular content being released by Kabam. What one, and this is going to be the last question before I let you go, but what is the what is the one piece of advice that you would give to Kabam to keep returning players engaged, and what would that be?
To keep returning players engaged, I think obviously because they're the ones that matter the most because they're the ones that are on the fence.
Yep.
If you get like players like like myself or folks that play the regulars, they can complain about a lot of things, but they're more than likely going to be coming around tomorrow and the next day. They're going to play whatever, or they're going to not play whatever. That stuff is kind of in stone. For returning players, I think the most important thing they can do, that Kabam can do, if they ever like, who am I? I'm just a regular guy, right? But the biggest thing is just to make that return as simple as possible.
Right.
Introduce it super easily, introduce it simply. I remember when I first came back, and I'm sure a lot of folks can attest to this. When you first come back after a while, you get inundated with like 5 different
Offers.
deals.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they nickel and dime you, all these different things. And I get it. It's a company, they're trying to make money off a free game. I understand that. That's neither here nor there. But I think just having a clear picture on like how they can get back and what's available to you, how does it open to you, is the best thing. If you can say this is what you'll get from when you put this much time into the game, that having that path available, I feel like just kind of makes everything else so simple. Like I said,
That's awesome.
I'm not a game developer I'm claiming to be, but that's how I view
No,
it.
that's a great answer. That's exactly what I was looking for. Fantastic answer. All right. So, and I lied. I have one last question for you. So this is going to be a continuing series, and we've already got a bunch of people that are lined up to do additional interviews for voices of the community. Who would you, as a viewer of the channel, like to see as a participant in voices of the community? We're talking free to play, we're talking whales, we're talking casual spenders, we're talking in game, we're talking not in game. Who would you like to hear from the most?
Me personally, I'd like to hear a lot from the folks that are not Endgame.
Okay.
I think that the voice that matters just as much, I feel like, is the folks that are stuck on Act 5, Act 6, the folks that are not quite Thronebreaker, the folks that are not done with Act 6, the folks that are in the weeds.
Okay.
In the quote unquote the worst part.
In the grind.
Of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The folks that aren't there in the middle part.
Yeah.
I think that there's a million different in-game players, and we also have a habit of being the ones that are the most vocal.
Yep.
Because you've stuck around the most.
Right.
And I feel like it's going to be very similar. I feel like the how is going to be the only real variable there, but the end result is going to be really similar for a lot of the end game players.
Right.
But the mid game folks, the folks who are kind of iffy, the folks who come back every so often, who are on the fence, I feel like their point of view, asking them, okay, well, what's preventing you from taking that step? What's preventing you from getting to this point? What's preventing you from just really seeing what all the game has to offer for you? What is that? I think that definitely have some value that hasn't really been tapped before.
Fantastic. All right. Well, BZ, thank you so much for spending your time with me tonight and having this fantastic talk. Hopefully, it wasn't too uncomfortable for you. It definitely wasn't for me. It was a pleasure. But
Yeah,
before
no, not at all.
before I let you go, and please stick around after I stop recording, I just want to say thank you again for your service to the country, and thank you for all you do. Thank you for being a loyal viewer of the channel, and hopefully we'll be talking soon later on, and see you in the chat. So thank you, BZ,
Yeah,
for
thank you
showing
so
up.
much for your
Thank you.
support. Thank you so much for having me. I
Yeah,
appreciate it so much. Always happy
absolutely,
to help.
absolutely.